أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I seek refuge in God from the rejected devil. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Welcome everyone to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a profoundly moving compilation put together by Mir Ali Shah for the Living the Wisdom of the Quran podcast. We're going to explore the opening verses of Sūrat al-Qalam, the chapter of the pen. This is one of those texts that just speaks directly to the core of the human experience, especially if you're navigating a spiritual path. It's all about steadiness. It's about inner truth. And really, it's about what happens when the rest of the world looks at your utter clarity and decides to call it confusion.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Think about it for a second. What do you actually do when your integrity is questioned? You know, when people look at your absolute refusal to let go of what you know is true, and they just label you unstable or even mad for it. In the preceding chapter, Sūrat al-Mulk, we were looking outward at the grand cosmic order, right? The heavens, the birds in the sky. But Sūrat al-Qalam, it shifts gears completely. It brings us right down to something so incredibly intimate, a single person's character under the crushing weight of public accusation. How do you hold steady when the whole room declares you unfit?
The chapter opens up not with some massive cosmic vow, but with an instrument so perfectly ordinary you could almost miss how heavy it is. Noon. By the pen and by what they inscribe. Now, the classical scholar al-Tabari points out that early commentators viewed that very first letter, Noon, as representing the inkwell. It's just a single dark mark that eventually becomes meaning, literally the threshold of writing. And why swear by the pen? Well, because the pen is the bridge between a fleeting thought and permanence. It takes what is transient and it makes it stick. So right from the jump, the Quran is telling us what is being recorded here is going to totally outlast the fleeting opinions of the crowd.
To really grasp the power of this opening, we've got to look at what was happening back then in early Mecca. The scholar al-Wahidi gives us this context. The ruling class basically had a pre-packaged diagnosis ready to go for the prophet. They labeled him Majnun, mad, possessed, a broken mind. And listen, this wasn't an invitation to debate. It was a weaponized charge. It's actually a brilliant, if totally malicious strategy, right? Because if someone is diagnosed as mad, you don't have to listen to them anymore. You don't have to engage with their message. It doesn't require refutation. You just repeat it over and over until it sticks.
So how does the Quran actually respond to that? This is the part that I find absolutely beautiful. It doesn't give them a clinical, point-by-point argument. It doesn't say, actually, his logic is perfectly sound because of X, Y, and Z. No. Instead, it offers this direct, unshakable divine assertion. بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ. By the grace of your Lord, you are not mad. The protection here is a literal act of divine grace. It's a covering that extends over exactly who the prophet is. That heavy accusation is just hanging there in the air, but the divine response simply steps in and asserts a much larger, much truer reality.
So the crucial point is, how does that grace actually show up in the real world? Well, that brings us to the phrase khulq adhim, a character of tremendous magnitude. The great commentator Ibn Kathir really lingers on this insight. He reminds us that true character isn't just about having good intentions, it's about what you actually do, over and over and over again. It's the unbroken grain of a life that you can really only see after time has passed. It's that absolute consistency of choosing to do the right thing, whether the entire world is watching or you are completely alone. It's the perfect alignment of who you are in private and who you are in public.
And this is where we get to see the beautiful, multi-layered depth of Quranic commentary. On one hand, we've got the outer, classical reading, which views this protection as a historical and physical defense of the prophet's sanity and his mission. But then, we have the inner reading from the mystics. The 9th century scholar Sahl al-Tustari offers this breathtaking perspective. Grace isn't just some external shield. It is the hidden reality that is holding you upright in every single moment. So in this view, madness is actually forgetting your divine origin. Meaning, the prophet is being held in this constant interior presence that never forgets God, even when the entire world around him is just drowning in forgetfulness.
And, of course, the great Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi takes this inner reading even deeper. Rumi teaches that, look, to a world totally obsessed with appetites and worldly success, a soul that actually prioritizes divine presence over fitting in, it's always going to look completely deranged. But Rumi flips the script. He redefines this so-called madness as the highest possible form of sanity. You are mad only to those who have completely forgotten what reality looks like. Your absolute refusal to accept the crowd's flawed logic, your willingness to be vulnerable before the divine, that is what true clarity looks like.
Al-Ghazali, in his masterwork, the Ihya, anchors all of this tremendous character in one single, powerful concept: Niyya, intention, one will, one direction, one love. He explains that the Prophet's heart was literally never divided. There was no secret lingering doubt, no hidden worldly ambition. Tremendous character stems directly from an undivided heart, standing strong against a profoundly confused world. The crowd calling him mad? That was really just their own deep confusion, reacting to a wholeness and a singular focus that they just couldn't even begin to comprehend.
The science of the steady mind echoes in modern psychology. Let's shift gears just a bit here and look at how this ancient spiritual wisdom maps perfectly onto modern science. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the empirical data is basically just catching up to the revelation. It's showing us the literal neurological mechanics of a steady mind. First up, perceptual bias. People literally see what they expect to see, which perfectly explains why the crowd was blind to the Prophet's reality. But even more fascinating, neuroscience shows that people who are deeply grounded in their core values actually show reduced activation in the brain's default mode network, specifically the areas linked to social anxiety and seeking approval from others. They are neurologically steady. Plus, longitudinal studies prove that conscientiousness and integrity, which is exactly what khuluq azim is, predicts long-term success and longevity way better than raw intelligence. True character is a scientifically proven neural pattern. Which brings us to the psychology of time. The Quran captures this beautifully with the phrase fasofa tabsirun, so you will see. Notice that shift to the future tense? It's all about the arc of vindication. Cognitive psychology actually tells us that when a person can vividly imagine a future outcome, a time of future vindication where the truth finally becomes clear, it radically changes their resilience right now in the present. It gives them the strength to endure immediate pain and mockery because they've anchored themselves in a much larger story. A steady character doesn't panic for immediate validation. It calmly waits for the inevitable clarity of time.
But ultimately, true validation doesn't just come from the passage of time. It comes from the divine. The classical scholar al-Qurtubi makes a brilliant point about this verse. He reminds us that God's knowledge is absolutely nothing like human opinion. It doesn't waver with trends or favor or the shifting moods of society. It is a piercing, totally unchanging mercy. God knows entirely who is lost and who is guided. And honestly, the ultimate consolation for anyone being condemned by the room is knowing that they are entirely perfectly known by the one who measures all hearts.
I want to invite you to just pause for a second and look at this phrase, وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ. And indeed, your Lord is the all-knowing. If you have ever felt the absolute weight of the crowd's naming, if you've ever started to doubt your own clarity just because the voices around you got too loud, I invite you to try a small practice. Over the next few days, just sit quietly with this phrase. Let it really settle into your heart. Notice what it quiets down inside of you. Try to feel the profound difference between being partially, falsely judged by a crowd and being completely, perfectly known by God.
So, we leave you with this final echoing question. When the room doubts you, are you going to double their doubt within yourself, or are you going to hold steady, trust in divine knowledge, and let the pen outlast the crowd's naming? Let's close out with a gentle munajat, a quiet prayer from Mir Ali Shah's beautiful compilation. O you who knows what is hidden, when the room doubts me, let me not double their doubt. Teach me to walk in my own knowing without needing their confirming. Let the pen write what it writes. Let it outlast the crowd's naming. Hold me steady, not in their sight, but in yours. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep seeking, keep reflecting, and stay steady.